everybody could please mute your screen, just going to play this to sort of get us started. It's just a minute. This is Kathy and I in Sacramento last week, expecting the chapter award. And we're there with District Director Susie Herrera from Senator Stern's office. Outside under a tent in front of the Capitol, we saw Cindy Newberg, Jesse Gabriel,
Climate Reality Project, San Fernando Valley Chapter, honored by Senator Henry Stern.
Woo! Anyway, so congratulations, everybody in the chapter. You guys did such a great job this past year, enough to be recognized by Senator Stern. So thank you all for everything that you do. My name's Diana Wynand. I'm chapter chair, and I'm going to be kicking things off. Welcome to our chapter meeting. It's going to be a great night. We're going to learn a ton about ocean health, the bills, ocean rights. So thanks for joining us. We always like to start by sharing a land acknowledgement for our area. And we like to share not just the acknowledgement, but why we do the acknowledgement. So our Tara Sitzer from our leadership team, our administrative coordinator, is going to read. And while she reads the land acknowledgement, I am going to share it on my screen so that you guys can read along. Tara?
A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes and respects Indigenous peoples as stewards of this land and the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. It acknowledges the history that has brought us to reside on this land, the colonialism that is present in our current systems, and calls on us to be mindful of our own present participation in it. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Tongva, Kizh, Tataviam, and Chumash tribes.
Great. Okay, well, we're going to get started tonight on our program, and we have some, I love the ocean. It's summertime. How many of you love the ocean? I mean, I'm a sailor, so this is my favorite topic. So we have some really interesting input tonight, and it's going to cover ocean bills, ocean health, and ocean rights. And to kick it off, we have Julie Cravoto. Am I saying that right, Julie? Good. Julie Cravoto is Legislative Director for Assemblymember Dawn Addis, who has introduced the bill AB 1407, which has to do with oceans. And I thought, because we focus so much on legislation, I thought it'd be really great if Julie could explain just a little bit about that bill and where it is, what it's there for, and how we can help continue to support it getting through the Senate. Julie, I'm just going to spotlight you as you speak so people can find you.
Hi all, well, it's great to meet you. As Diana mentioned, my name is Julie Cravoto. I'm Legislative Director for Assemblymember Dawn Addis. She represents 20% of our coastal area, so anywhere from Monterey to San Luis Obispo, that is primarily her district. She's also chair of the Central Coast Caucus, which focuses on things such as climate resiliency, as well as habitat restoration and climate conservation. So one of the biggest bills that she's doing this year in partner with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Nature Conservancy is AB 1407, which is the Ocean Life Recovery Act. And essentially what this does is it creates recovery goals for ocean ecosystems, and it also develops a state structure to support statewide restoration projects. So when you think about the type of habitats that are going to be protected, think mainly in terms of kelp, oyster beds, those sorts of really unique ecosystems that we have in the ocean. The University of California, Santa Cruz in 2021 had found that kelp forests in particular had declined by 95% as of last year. So the losses of these key habitats, including like eelgrass, kelp, they've largely been driven by pollution and climate change. And so it's really important that we do all that we can in order to protect them, considering their benefits for carbon sequestration, but also the economic benefits of having these unique habitats. So what this bill will do is basically take models that you see in Japan, Korea, Australia, and even several US locations such as Virginia and Florida to help protect these areas. So we're going to have a new program for large-scale restoration, which means hitting acreage targets as well as having those goals by a certain date. We're going to have clear restoration goals specifically for kelp, eelgrass, and native oyster beds. And we're going to have accountability measures for the state to ensure that we stay on this path. We're going to create a working group that will consult with scientists across the state. And then finally, because this is something that is essential for all big legislation, we're going to create an ocean restoration and recovery fund to ensure that there is a permanent amount of money to fund these types of projects going forward. This bill, so far has gotten through the Assembly with bipartisan support. We're very lucky to have both Democrats and Republicans supporting this effort, which if you've been in the legislature, you know that there's not always an ideological alignment on some of these issues. So it's great to see that we have the whole legislature supporting us. This bill, upon passing out of the Assembly floor, is now going to Senate Natural Resources, which is a big committee. And we are expecting to have our bill heard on July 10th of this year. So if you're interested in supporting, please feel free to send in letters of support. You can also show up to the hearing, call, meet with your legislators, especially senators, to express support for this important bill. As I mentioned, there is a budget component as well. So we want to make sure that not only are we securing this bill and getting Governor Newsom to sign it, but we want to make sure that there is a fund in place so that we really can get started on hitting these targets. And thank you all for your interest in this. This is a really critical topic, so we're glad to have your support.
This is great. Thank you so much, Julie. I heard something, and I hope we can touch on it either from you or one of our other presenters, that the potential to capture carbon, that the ocean has more potential to capture carbon than terrestrial approach from trees. So I don't know if that's true. Maybe it'll come up in one of the other presenters tonight, but it's the potential is huge. And so this is a very good bill for us to support. And Kathy, I don't know if you're going to send around at some point before then a reminder for folks to submit letters.
Well, we have LA and San Fernando Valley chapters have sent in our letters of support, and along with Climate Action California, who is a partner association, a partner group, advocacy group that we work with. And I put in the chat, if you don't know who your state senator is, please click on that link and find out and make a quick phone call. Like I said when we started, one phone call can make a difference. So if everybody, it's so easy. If you've never done it, you call and you say, my name is, and I am a constituent of Senator Stern or Portantino or whoever your senator is. And I would like you to vote yes on AB 1407. It's that simple. And the people who answer the phone, and I do have to say this, Julie, to everybody who works in Sacramento, I have never met a person on the other end of the line who was short or impatient or testy. I mean, and that's a high stress job. And every time I call, I feel great that somebody listened. So I highly encourage you to please make a call on 1407 to your state senator.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you.
for being here, Julie. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all
much
for your time and for your support, and have a great evening.
Thanks. You too. Great. So that's a bill. That's something we can take action on for right here in California. Our next guest is Katie Thompson, and I'm going to have our vice chair, Michelle Ringler, give Katie an introduction before she begins her presentation. So Michelle, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks so much, Diana. So, Katie Thompson is the program manager of Tufts Caribbean Marine Research and Conservation Initiative. She's involved with Tufts work in the wider Caribbean.
I just want to say what TOF is. TOF is the Ocean Foundation. The Ocean Foundation. Yeah. So.
With the Gulf of Mexico region, which includes projects that bring countries together to conserve and study shared marine resources, restore marine and coastal habitats, develop national and regional environmental policies, and support community-based alternative livelihoods and protect endangered marine species. Katie has her master's degree in marine affairs from the University of Washington School of Marine and Environmental Affairs, where she specialized in community-based marine conservation strategies and nonprofit management. She conducted her thesis on fisheries learning exchanges, which brings fisheries stakeholders together to share resource management and best practices. Before graduate school, Katie was granted a Fulbright fellowship in Costa Rica, where she taught at the University of Costa Rica and worked with sea turtle conservation organizations on the Caribbean coast. She holds a BA in biology from Oberlin College. So please give a warm welcome to Katie Thompson.
Great. Excellent, Katie. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you so it's easier for everyone to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. And you're going to be talking to us about some of the programs from the Ocean Foundation. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Michelle, for that intro. And thanks to Diana for the invitation to present here today. I'm just, from what the little I know about your group, you all are doing truly amazing things and are implementing on the ground action, which is what we need. And some days at my work, I'm a little removed from that. And so it's just very inspiring to hear all of your stories and what you're doing. We all need to do our part, as I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's important. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And Julie, in her intro to the bill, is tied very nicely into what I'll be talking about today. She spoke two key words: large scale and then restoration efforts. So that is what's needed in order to conserve and protect the environment and all the benefits it provides to us. Like I say, I'm Katie Thompson. I'm a program manager at the Ocean Foundation. The Ocean Foundation headquarters is in Washington, D.C., but I'm actually based in Santa Cruz, so northern side of Monterey Bay. I spend a lot of time at the ocean here, but as you'll learn, most of my work actually occurs in warmer waters in the Caribbean. So today I'll be talking about enhancing resilience to climate change through protection and restoration of our oceans and coasts. I believe we'll have time at the end for questions, if you could hold on to those or type them in the chat and I can read them later. So I'm going to start off by talking about what is the Ocean Foundation, what do we do, what does my work consist of at the Ocean Foundation. I'll touch on the ocean climate nexus. It's something we could talk about for many hours, but I'll give a brief intro to that and why it's important to consider when we're talking about restoration and protection as a solution and mitigation strategy for climate change, as well as habitat loss. So first, diving into the Ocean Foundation. Our mission as the only community foundation for the ocean is to reverse the trend of destruction of ocean environments around the world. And we do that primarily through two arms of work. The first is we are fiscally sponsored various projects around the world. We sponsor up to around 50 projects in 40 different countries around the world. And what that means is that essentially we know that there are small groups of people, small organizations that are doing really powerful work for ocean conservation, but they don't necessarily have the capacity to administer those groups themselves. And so we provide that administrative help. We provide the 501c3 nonprofit US status, which results in a lot more donations and tax benefits for those donors. So a big plus for these smaller groups. And we essentially provide a network for all these projects. And so we have coverage globally, and we really are at the front lines from policy to on the ground planting and restoring of habitats. And so the second line of work is our core initiatives, which is where I'm based. So we have 4 core initiatives: the Blue Resilience Initiative, Community Ocean Engagement Initiative, Ocean Acidification Initiative, and Plastics Initiatives. For the Blue Resilience Initiative, which I'll get into a little more detail later, we're focusing on coastal community resilience and habitat restoration. On the Community Ocean Engagement Global Initiative, we focus on environmental education, marine education, specifically teaching trainers and how they can better translate ocean literacy into conservation action in their classrooms or in the field, whatever it may be. For ocean acidification, we know that there is a global problem of ocean data science being collected and being housed and not necessarily being shared, and specifically by countries in the global north. And so we're hopeful through this initiative, we're really building capacity around the world. And so maybe those less represented countries can collect their own data, run their own experiments, and contribute to that global conversation surrounding ocean acidification. And then for the plastics initiative, we're involved primarily at the high level. So we're involved in the global plastic treaty conversations that are happening right now, where countries are trying to hash out a global plastics treaty to reduce plastics usage. We're also advocating for the remaking of plastics so that they are easier to recycle. Right now, plastics, as we all know, are very complicated and complex, and that's one of the main problems for making them recyclable. So you can see we're doing a lot of different initiatives, but again, for today, I'll be focusing on this first one, the Blue Resilience Initiative. So just to touch on the ocean climate nexus and why the ocean is so important. 71% of our planet is covered by water. 1 in 7 people depend on the ocean for protein, and more than half of the population lives within 50 miles of the coast. But climate change is fundamentally changing the ocean. As we all know, ocean warming is a reality, and it is leading to sea level rise, king tides, nuisance flooding, severe storms, extreme rain, storm surges. Many of us in California this year experienced that firsthand with the large amount of rainfall. That also leads to coastal alteration and erosion, directly affecting the communities that live close to the coast. Also, ocean acidification is a major problem, potentially disrupting food chains throughout the ocean. So really having rippling effects. And the ocean is critical in regulating the climate change that is happening. It regulates the climate, weather, redistributes heat, as you can see through this current. The cold water sinks, warm water rises, bringing carbon along the way. And so this current is extremely important for regulating the entire Earth's climate. And once this current stops working, then there will be extremely bad effects of that, which we've already seen. the ocean holds 50 times more carbon dioxide than the atmosphere and absorbs more than 25 to 30% of human emissions of CO2. So extremely important for absorbing that CO2 and regulating that climate. Also, the ocean habitats play a role in that. So specifically seagrass meadows, mangroves, salt marshes, as well as coral reefs have been known to store carbon on scales larger than forests. So mangroves, Diana, you're right, they store 5 times more than the terrestrial ecosystems in terms of carbon. So extremely important, yet they occupy less than 0.5% of the global ocean surface area. So small amount of area, but huge potential in terms of carbon storage. And they also are important nursery habitat for an array of species. They use it for, especially juveniles, use mangroves and seagrass to hide out, to feed. Coral reefs, if anybody's been on a coral reef, you know that all the fish are on the coral reef and they're nowhere else. And so they're very important for protection also from other predators. They also provide protection from storms and sea level rise, these habitats. So people living on the coast really rely on them for those natural protections from storm surges, from hurricanes, from tsunamis, etc. And here is a photo that demonstrates just that. Last hurricane season, Tropical Storm Fiona in Puerto Rico, people hid out their boats to protect their boats, and look where they hid them, right in the middle of the mangrove forest, because they know that's where is the safest place. So I just like this photo because it's clear. It clearly demonstrates the benefits of mangrove forests in a very practical way, which many times were removed of those perhaps habitat or carbon sequestration benefits that coastal ecosystems like mangroves can provide. Yet there's an issue because these habitats are in decline. So for for corals, most of them may die off in the coming decades due to rising temperatures. Seagrass meadows decreased in extent by over 10% per decade from 1970 to 2000. Mangroves have declined by roughly 40%. Salt marsh coverage also has declined by a lot. Kelp forests have shown significant declines, although their declines is much more context and place dependent. One of the places where it has shown a lot of decline is in Australia, California too, hence the bill to really dedicate resources towards restoration. So you can see that the global patterns in terms of habitat destruction are not great. And so that overlaid with the climate change that's occurring really puts pressure on the ocean. It doesn't allow it to essentially provide the ecosystem services that it has historically. And so the question is, what can we do about that? And at the Blue Resilience Initiative at TOF, we focus on restoration and protection as a solution. So what do we do at BRE, as we call it? We support the research on the environmental, economic, social, and aesthetic benefits of blue carbon ecosystems. So it's not only, many of you heard about blue carbon and carbon credits, but we try to get away from that narrative. It's really about the entire ecosystem services that blue carbon provides. And by blue carbon, I mean primarily mangrove, seagrass, and salt marsh habitats. Sometimes coral reefs are grouped in, but it mostly is those other 3 habitats. And we also play a big role in coordinating training workshops. So with the belief that experts are the local people, they're on the ground, they're the ones living day to day, they're the most trained, they're the most knowledgeable in what's happening in their local context. And so we bring expertise when necessary, but it's mostly about bringing those experts on the ground together and providing those those facilitating those training opportunities. And then we actually are working on the ground, planting mangroves, doing the project implementation in collaboration with the local scientists, typically park managers. So we work a lot in national parks, and so working directly with the government, and then also with community members who many times in our projects are the ones getting paid to go out and do the restoration work. And I'll talk about a couple of our projects specifically so you get an idea of actually what we're doing. So like I said, I usually work in warmer waters. So in the Caribbean, I've worked in Cuba since 2015, and we've recently expanded that work to Mexico, DR, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, our main sites. But we continue to field interest from a lot of different places. So there's interest out there, and as we get more staff, we're eager and willing to expand. So I just like this image because, like I said, we really try to take the whole ecosystem services into account. And so it's not only about the carbon storage and the coastal buffering, as you see here in the image, but these habitats provide many different ecosystem services, specifically to the communities that are living in and near them. So cultural heritage, employment opportunities, opportunities for recreation enjoyment, tourism, biodiversity habitat, many, many different services. And we keep that in mind as we carry out our projects. So here, this is a great project located in Xcalac in the Yucatan Peninsula in the Mexican Caribbean coast. So right on the border with Belize, as far south in Mexico on the Caribbean coast as you can get. And here we are conducting large-scale mangrove restoration. Here it says 627 hectares, but it's actually closer to, it's grown at closer to 800 hectares. And so what we're doing here, what we did here first is essentially mapping the area with our colleague here, Manuel, in the center. He mapped the area, and through the mapping techniques, he's able to see where kind of historical mangrove coverage before, looking at previous maps up until today, and notice that the main issue here was this road that was built, you could see going to Xcalac. This is the only road leading from the larger city out here to Xcalac. So a very important in terms of economy for the local community, but what it did was cut off water flow from one side to the other. And what that means for mangroves is death, unfortunately. So one side, really both the sides of the road are, you drive through and there are dead mangroves on each side. And so, you know, looking at this map, it's pretty clear what needs to happen are the digging canals. Well, there were canals in the road, but they were just poorly constructed. They were too high. So we need to lower them and clear them out so that the water flow can return. And this work is led by local university in Mexico, as well as with the park managers. So we're at this point where we've mapped it, we've planned out a restoration plan, and now just a couple months ago, we were there where the local university was training community members. Here you see the picture on the right-hand side of how to dig the canals, and then how to essentially, they build little places where the mangrove propagules, the mangrove seedlings will be planted. And so you can see it's completely community driven. They're about to break ground any day now. And they'll essentially be doing this type of work for 3 years. So digging kilometers and kilometers of canal and making many of these places where the mangroves reside. And what's really cool about this project is you see the woman here in the red shirts. They were trained by the same university 10 years ago in another community in the Yucatan Peninsula. And so they were the ones that actually came and trained this new community of Xcalac in the restoration efforts. So it's just, yeah, it's powerful, it's inspiring, and it's a really cool project. Next, I'll move to Cuba, one of the places we worked the longest, in Guanacavives National Park on the very, very western tip of Cuba. And I like to illustrate this project because we are truly working in all habitats in this park. So here they're moving invasive species from the coast to allow the mangroves to go back. They're actually planting mangrove propagules. There's a big trash issue, and so removing the trash that's been thrown into the mangroves. Environmental education with the local schools is a big aspect. We're also doing coral restoration at the park, and then we're also doing sargassum mitigation. Sargassum is a big issue in the Caribbean, large seaweed washing onto beaches. While a natural phenomenon at really large rates, it's extremely detrimental to the coastal habitats, nesting sea turtles and other marine species. So anyways, here in Cuba, at the site in Cuba, we're doing really a multifaceted project. Mangroves is one of it, but thinking about the entire coastal ecosystem and the services that they provide, we're taking all of those into account. So that's been a successful project. And now here, I just want to touch quickly on the blue carbon market, because when you hear those words, a lot of times people go to the market and carbon credits. And just so I can give you an overview of how that works for our project in Xcalac in Mexico, we actually are considering carbon credits for that project, and that is because the community has asked for it. And so while it's not the main purpose of our work, it will be a benefit if we can secure them. And so what that means is we need to document carbon sequestration now, and then after restoration happens, so that we can demonstrate that because of our project, there's been a change, and issue carbon credits based on that projected change. And that's done through standards. The one we're working with in Mexico is Plan Vivo, but there are other VCS, Gold Standard, Climate Action Reserve, where they set up standards. There's third parties that come in and verify, and they develop their methodologies and then issue carbon credits. For Plan Vivo, there's a stipulation where 60% of the carbon credits go back into the community. So it's invested back into the project, back into improving the project, which is something we liked about Plan Vivo specifically. We're right now certifying, in the process of certifying the largest mangrove restoration project in Puerto Rico too. So it's a relatively new thing for the field and for us, but it's important part of the picture, and there are some challenges to it. And so for the blue carbon projects, you have to demonstrate additionality. So why, because of your project, a certain area was conserved? Why, because of your project, a certain area was restored? These projects, it's challenging that they're actually long lasting. Land tenure is a big issue. And when you think about human rights, indigenous rights, is land being taken away from some group of people in order to make a profit out of it. There's a high cost to it. And so it's funny, I hear all the time where investors are talking about, they really are hungry for blue carbon credits, but there's not enough projects out there. And there aren't many projects out there, but that's because it costs probably around $500,000 to get up and going, and years of work, but they're not willing to give the money or the time to do that. And so there's a lot of work that just has to be done to get these projects up and running. And then that also, that's challenging to break even. And again, the long-term monitoring is a challenge. So I know I only have a few minutes left, and I'll run through these last few slides. The Principles of High Quality Blue Carbon is an important initiative led by Conservation International and others. And it's just acknowledging that there's good and bad projects out there, and investors and nonprofits need to be very careful about what's happening in these projects. And so these high quality principles focusing on empowering people, employing the best information, operate locally and contextually, mobilize high integrity capital, and safeguard nature. And these are more detailed, but I just wanted to highlight that not all projects are carbon projects, not all blue carbon projects are the same, and that they need to be critically examined, particularly for the benefits or harm they're causing to the local communities. So just to end, that the momentum is real in this space. The 30 by 30 agreed to by UN members, and California also has its own initiative, is to protect 30% of terrestrial and ocean environment by 2030. And you can see globally we're less than 10%. So we have a long way to go. And so now the global community is thinking about how we can incentivize continued protection. The Paris Climate Agreement established nationally determined contributions by countries so that they can set targets of greenhouse gas emission reductions. And one way they're doing that now is through the restoration and conservation of coastal habitats. So there are tools out there. The Mangrove Breakthrough Initiative, which was announced at the Conference of Parties last fall in Egypt, announced that they would invest $4 billion to secure the future of 15 million hectares of mangroves globally by 2030, restoring half of recent losses and doubling protections. So some really lofty goals, but they're important. And it's work like ours that we're fighting a bit off of that goal, but this global momentum is really helping us meet new colleagues and implement projects at a larger scale, which are necessary. And just to mention, as I wrap up, just the justice component of our work, it's really important to understand that climate change affects communities and countries differently globally, and the blame or the work is really pushed onto those countries who aren't the highest polluters or who didn't get us into this position in the first place. And so just to acknowledge that, and that we need to have those countries and those communities at the table when we are talking about any kind of restoration or protection efforts. Indigenous voices particularly are important in these areas. I know California does a good job of that through its environmental justice policy. And of course, we can always continue to improve on how we have these conversations. So just to finalize with a few words, that you cannot protect the ocean without solving climate change, and you cannot solve climate change without protecting the ocean. Restoring ocean abundance will protect the economy, environment, and society from a disrupted climate. Because the ocean is our lungs, our heat sink, our carbon sink, our weather regulator, and our food source, there is no downside to restoring abundance. We must collectively move toward restoring ocean abundance. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions if there's time.
So Katie, thank you so much. That was really very informative, and we have a couple of questions coming into the chat. What I would like to do, because we have a little bit more information on ocean rights, if there are a couple of questions that you want to take, but I would encourage everyone to go ahead and add questions into the chat. We're going to split this up, take a couple of questions now, and then talk about ocean rights, and then come back and continue with some more questions. How does that sound? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Good.
it sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, do you see, I know I saw Robert Mason had a question. Is there a downside to carbon credit strategy?
Yes, I think the downside is that we could be moving too fast right now in terms of trying to get projects online and trying to meet the demand of companies primarily requiring carbon credits. And how that works is through carbon offsets. So for example, Delta Airlines got in trouble recently by making claims that they're net zero, and that's essentially the whole narrative, is that companies can continue to do what they're doing, but just by offsetting it makes them net zero. And so I think there's a conversation that's ongoing, but yeah, the push to get these projects online quickly could result in careless implementation of projects. So it needs to be done correctly and with care.
Great. And then Polly asked, she was questioning about the Gulf of Mexico and whether or not it's changing due to warming waters and the sports fishing and commercial fishing enterprises. I don't know if your work exposes you to that or not, but if you can respond.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And I've done a lot of fisheries work too. And unfortunately, the Gulf of Mexico is, like many other places globally, overfished. And what that means is that when there's no fish, for example, the fish don't eat the algae off the coral reefs, and the coral reefs start to die. And so it's very much an ecosystem that depends on healthy coastal habitats. And our work in the Gulf of Mexico is surrounding a lot with coral reefs. And so we're seeing direct threats to them because of global warming. There's a disease right now that's passing through, that started in Florida and passing down south now to the Caribbean, that's everywhere, that's devastating coral reefs, and scientists don't know how to stop it. And so those kind of situations are very scary, and are a result of climate change happening. It's just scary when there's no solution, where these things are happening too quickly. We can't get in there and stop it.
Right. And then that leads to we'll take one more question. Terry popped in the chat, which her brother living in Florida, about the manatees struggling and starving, which you just made reference to. But are there projects in the works there to help restore their habitat?
Yes. I'm not sure about Florida specifically, but manatees depend on healthy mangrove habitats, and appropriate water temperature too. And so I do know of some things happening in Florida, but I also know what I've heard about the projects in Florida. There could be a lot more done. I lived in Miami for a little bit, and they almost were able to outlaw mangrove restoration. So so hopefully things are changing around now, but a lot of it, as we all know, it depends on politics too. So
Great. Okay, well, we're going to come back to you, Katie, if that's all right. Katie's going to stay with us. And so feel free to please add more questions to the chat that she can respond to. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, because the next part of the presentation is that we want to talk a little bit about ocean rights. And what I'm sharing with you here is, and I'm going to pop something in the chat. There's a program called One Blue Voice. I've just popped the link in the chat. So as we move on to the next presenter, I want you to feel free to multitask, click on that, and go ahead and sign this petition. They're trying to get 50,000 signatures before the Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights is taken to the UN General Assembly in September. And this is representation of where all of the signatures have been coming from, and the US has quite a few. But I'm going to let you go ahead and let's see. Just come back here, and I'm going to remove your spotlight, Katie, so that we can go ahead. And I'm going to now, in terms of talking to someone about ocean rights, there's an ocean race going on, and so some people were not available. But someone was available, except they are only available on video. And so we have Rachel Bustamante. Rachel is the Ocean Science and Policy Analyst with Earth Law Center, and they focus on rights, nature's rights. I used to be involved with that organization. But I want to go ahead and play this video. It's about 10 minutes. So while we listen to Rachel talk about ocean rights, feel free to add questions to the chat for Katie, or if questions come up about ocean rights, go ahead and pop those in the chat as well. Let's see, I need to make sure that as I share this, we make sure we have, there we go. Here we go. This is Rachel Bustamante with Earth Law Center.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rachel Bustamante. I'm an ocean science and policy analyst at Earth Law Center, where our mission is to advance ecocentric law, policy, and governance through advocacy, consultation, and education for the well-being of the Earth community. So we work to not only transform our legal, governance, and economic systems, but also the values, ethics, and beliefs that create that foundation. So our Ocean Rights Program, founded in 2017 by Michelle Bender, is a critical component towards realizing this mission. And this program was created to help address a gap in the rights of nature space, being that so far, advancements in the movement have largely been limited to land-based ecosystems. So less than 5% of laws or policies actually refer to or are specific to marine ecosystems. So I want to touch on today just an overview of what is ocean rights and touch on one of our key campaigns, which is the Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights. So I just want to provide some context of the origins and really also highlight that growing research indicates how we value and relate to the ocean is tightly linked to how we manage human activity in the ocean space. Ocean rights stems from Earth jurisprudence, which I imagine you're familiar with or have been talking about this evening, which is this philosophy of law based on the understanding that humanity is part of nature. So this understanding can help transform our relationship with the Earth, with the ocean, from separation or resource use towards interconnection and care, and is guided by principles and standards of governance like wholeness, reciprocal responsibilities, and restoration. And in practice, this means aiming for a foundational paradigm shift in values, ethics, and beliefs. And Earth law includes these similar, synergetic, but also differing legal movements like rights of nature or ecocide, animal rights. And if you have been talking about rights of nature this evening, I'm sure you're aware it's been enacted into law and policy in more than 30 countries. And ocean rights stems from the rights of nature movement, but with specific application and attention to the needs of the one interconnected ocean of this planet. So ocean rights is this innovative and comprehensive approach to bring together all of our values, the natural, cultural, relational, and social values that guide our activities, our human interests and behaviors as they relate to the ocean. So simply, it is a positive human-ocean relationship. And in practice, this means an oscillating balance between human interests and activities with respect to the needs of the ocean and species within, and actually managing activity within ecological and planetary boundaries. So in practice, this can mean a legal approach of recognizing the inherent rights or intrinsic value of the ocean or of marine ecosystems, of marine species. And additionally, at its core is a governance and responsibility-based framework, so helping us shift those values that dictate how we manage our human activity in the ocean space. And some underlying philosophies of ocean rights, similar to rights of nature, are that human rights are dependent upon the health and functioning of the ocean, the physical systems, the ecosystems, and species within. We also try to really look at the indirect drivers of policy. So going back to those values and norms and recognizing that these are important leverage points to address systemic issues, just as much as the direct drivers like exploitation. So again, if we shift values of the ocean towards recognizing the ocean as actually our source of life with intrinsic value, we can help prevent overexploitation and irreversible harm. So inherent with that relationship with the ocean is our reciprocal responsibilities and obligations to protect and preserve the ocean long term. And to touch on one of our primary campaigns of the Ocean Rights Program at Earth Law Center is this goal towards a universal declaration of ocean rights or similar by 2030. The initiative was launched in March 2022 by the Ocean Race, a international organization that has been leading the ocean race worldwide, and Earth Law Center, and Nature's Rights, and the municipality of Genova. This is also led primarily by the government of Cabo Verde, with support of the government of Monaco, and building upon and growing other international and state support, including local governments, including Itajaí and Santa Catarina, Brazil, Aarhus in Denmark, and Newport, Rhode Island as well, just recently at the Ocean Race Summit in Newport, Rhode Island in May. So this campaign has the purpose of creating a shared global vision of that positive human-ocean relationship and giving the ocean a voice and representation within a multinational governance system, like at the UN level. So the government of Cabo Verde signed on in 2022 to lead this introduction of ocean rights within the United Nations General Assembly, planning for this September 2023, and is leading discussions with governments to increase this formal support at the UN and national levels. So part of this campaign has been fostering dialogue and consultation through a series of innovation workshops where we've brought together over 150 experts so far, policymakers, business leaders, lawyers, indigenous communities, scientists, and various stakeholders to engage in meaningful discussions on ocean rights and develop this strategy and form what it should look like. And so we are now in the process of taking all of that input into account and moving towards a draft document outlining a new values-based foundation or a code of conduct to serve as just a starting point for the Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights and its inclusion in upcoming UN agendas. So not the official document, but just gathering all of that input and underpinning what ocean rights means. So how you can get involved and how you can support is there's first the One Blue Voice petition to collect support, which has now garnered over 24,000 signatures, I believe. So we absolutely encourage active participation in shaping this sustainable, ecologically sustainable future with the ocean, what that means, what that looks like by signing and sharing this petition. It's called the One Blue Voice again. And your support is absolutely critical in ensuring a thriving and well-being, healthy ocean in the future. We also additionally recognize and welcome input. If this is your expertise, if this is a topic you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me. We're always looking for that expertise to help guide the development of this campaign, especially within the UN system. And I think one other item I would love to just touch on is relation to how we frame this, because I think ocean rights or rights of nature can sometimes come from an adversarial point of view. But something that's been really critical to our approach is that we're positioning ocean rights as a positive, as a welcoming, inclusive campaign that is meant to help strengthen the ocean rights agendas, just the ocean governance agendas that are already in existence. So we're not necessarily framing traditional law as the problem or approaching very critically. We're coming from and inviting and representing diverse values and relationships with the ocean to try and inspire people to take action and to represent these diverse relationships and values that we have with the ocean. And we know, for millennia that communities and peoples worldwide, particularly indigenous communities, have revered the ocean as a living being or as an ancestor, as a kin, and have sustained balanced relationships and interconnected relationships with the ocean. So that's been really critical to to informing and learning from in this campaign. We recognize that those relationships, those worldviews are often excluded and not well represented within the UN system. So our hope is that this initiative can be both a diverse representation of all of these worldviews and uplift them and amplify them. In general, ocean health is often excluded from many global discussions. So here we are centering the ocean and aiming to solidify these norms of stewardship and responsibility. And this campaign is garnering a lot more attention worldwide. And in addition, I've noticed, and we've noticed, just a growing recognition of these values and ideas in international governance. For example, the Convention on Biological Diversity, Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework included the rights of nature and rights of Mother Earth for the first time in a global multilateral treaty this past December, and considers and has rights of nature as a consideration of the framework, meaning it amplifies this approach and suggests that states consider this approach as a way to meet the targets, the vision of the framework itself. Additionally, the High Seas Treaty recently passed and agreed upon additionally includes the desire to act as stewards of areas beyond national jurisdiction in its preamble, and asks within that preamble as well the desire to not only be stewards, but to conserve the inherent value of biodiversity in these areas. So we saw that also as a great win towards ocean rights and a positive recognition of the inherent value of biodiversity of the ocean, and as a stepping stone for this growing recognition of a need to shift from business as usual to reframe and rethink how we think about the ocean and how we manage human activity in the ocean space. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I really appreciate this conversation you're having. And again, my name is Rachel Bustamante. Feel free to email me with any questions, concerns, or if you have an interest in ocean rights, in the Universal Declaration of Ocean Rights campaign, or anything else in addition to the ocean. So I really appreciate it. And I really thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Great. So we hear a little bit about ocean rights. And Katie, I just want to ask you if in the work you do you guys come up against ocean rights, or is that at play, or is this like a completely different initiative than what you do?
Most definitely, yes. I think you can see it on the small scale when we're talking about, our smaller mangrove restoration projects where we're doing it for the ecosystem itself. These other benefits come secondary, and I think the one point that Rachel touched on towards the end is particularly important when we talk about areas beyond national jurisdiction. So these are the high seas. So these are the areas of the ocean where nobody owns, but it's benefit of everybody. And so these areas, they represent 64% of the surface of the ocean and nearly 95% of its volume. So extremely important. And then those types of ocean rights narratives will be vital in thinking about how to manage and protect these areas. So while the treaty was passed, the details are still to be determined. And so I hope conversations going forward have ocean rights at the center.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. And you guys, again, I popped that link to One Blue Voice in the chat, and there is a video at the bottom of that page. You can scroll down and you get a little bit of a picture of what they're fighting for with this. It goes to, there's this ocean race, and the whole concept behind that is to literally race to Newport, I want to say in September, with the idea of then bringing this Universal Declaration to the UN in September. So it's definitely something I'm looking at. We have a Rights of Nature group in our chapter, and this is a real interest to us and to me. And I don't know if anybody else is interested in following that. I don't think we need to get a boat to go to Newport, but we can at least track it and see how it lands at the UN in September. But does anyone have any questions for Katie? And if it's also on, any other topics of ocean rights or even the bill, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Wayne, I see has his hand up. I'll just call on you. And then just so you guys know, once we finish with the program part of our meeting, we do some announcements. And if you are from a different organization and would like to share or announce something you guys are doing, we welcome that. But first, let's just do the final few questions while we have Katie here. Wayne, go ahead.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for the presentation. It was great. I was just wondering about agricultural runoff. How big a problem is that, and how is it being addressed? And the other thing I'm curious about is these dead zones caused by heat. And I hear that could be a real large issue. And I'm just wondering about that also.
Yes. The agricultural runoff is a huge problem, and that is why at our projects we try to think about the pollution runoff, because you restore mangrove or coral habitat, and if there's a pollution input, then that restoration work does nothing, because the water quality and the habitat is so poor. In the Mesoamerican Reef, we're off the coast of Central America and Mexico where we work. That is the #1 threat to the coral reefs there, is the agricultural runoff. And they've traced it essentially to one small area, so one river for the entire watershed. So it's a huge issue, and that's going to require looking upstream and working with those industries and the policymakers there. I would work with a group in Guatemala, or was talking to them, and they actually sued local industry because of their pollution into the river that's then running into the ocean. And so it's going to require strategies like that to stop that runoff, because it's a key part of the picture. And then with the dead zones caused by heat, yes, also a problem. I mean, that's a clear result of climate change, and the currents aren't moving like they should, and moving colder to warmer waters, thinking of the carbon, and these issues are we'll continue to see them more and more as the ocean and the earth gets warmer.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, Christy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about erosion, and it's something I think of every time I go to Malibu, and I see the beach eroding closer and closer to the houses. And is there legislation or policy that protects the ocean from housing debris? And are they required to take those houses down before the beach reaches their porch? And how does that all go?
Yeah, my understanding, that's a very more local government related issue. And so just the community north of here in Santa Cruz, a house literally fell off of the cliff into the water. And so there's this big debate about relocating neighborhoods like that. But as you can imagine, that's extremely political. And what that local government decided, it was also too costly to do. For the government to do. And so it's not only we talk about, you know, houses here in California, but there are entire nations that will have to relocate just because of sea level rise and erosion. So those are, yeah, really, really key climates. Within the US, we're already having climate refugees, you know, moving to places that aren't experiencing climate change as strongly right now. So yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but it's very politicized, and nobody wants to touch it until they have to, until their house falls into the water.
Just let the house pollute the ocean. Just fall in and pollute the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's they don't think that long term, but yes, that is what's happening. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Katie. If anybody doesn't have any questions, we've, all right, everybody unmute and just let Katie know how much we appreciate her being here.
Thank you.
Yay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Also like to thank Rachel Bustamante for speaking on ocean rights and introducing us to One Blue Ocean, which I popped in the chat there. Please go and sign up for that. And Katie, maybe we can be in touch as we, you know, as you go through some of your projects. Maybe we can get an update from you sometime. We'll pop in and do a short update now that we understand what you're doing. We appreciate what you're doing and the Ocean Foundation is doing. We'd love to keep track of that. Okay.
I would love to. Tomorrow I head to Havana for a coral restoration workshop.
Wow.
So I'll send you some
one
photos.
That's great.
And then I'll keep you updated. I really, really appreciate the invite, Diana. And yeah, I'd be happy to be in touch with any of you going forward. Thanks so much for everything you do.
Thank you. Really, thank you for what you do. And thanks for sharing your work with us tonight. Appreciate it. So I guess we'll go ahead and close for the evening. Thank you so much. We are not meeting in July because some of you are going off and doing wonderful things. Have a great time. Send pictures. We should have a newsletter of just like all the places people have been during the month that they had off. So take good care, everyone. Reach out if you need anything, but otherwise we will see you here in August 8th. Okay.
Reminder, take that book to the beach. So
take that book. Yes, yes, exactly. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.